Floyd has many problems, all of them bigger than a breadbasket. His wife Carol and his friend Clark are having an affair behind his back. He can't lose his annoying belly weight. But Floyd's biggest problem? He's dead. Has Floyd been murdered? Let's solve DTF St. Louis, Episode 1, Cornhole. When Clark and Floyd learn that both their marriages have stalled, they begin to explore a new dating app for extramarital affairs. We'll be breaking down each episode for clues, suspects, and red herrings on the hunt to learn who killed Floyd, if he was killed. Spoilers for the first episode of DTF St. Louis. If you haven't seen the first episode, pause this video, run to Outback Steakhouse and get a big bloomin' onion, and then come back and watch. Use the timestamps below to jump to the topic or suspect you want to hear about and skip past things you don't want to hear about. At the end of this podcast, we'll present the second bike theory. Before we begin, know that this series began development in 2022 as an adaptation of an article in The New Yorker entitled My Dennis Murder Trial by James Lasden. This is a fascinating real-life case where in 2011, Thomas Coleman was killed, and the police arrested his good friend Dr. Gilberto Nunez for his murder. Now this is a spoiler alert for the real-life case. Jump ahead if you don't want to hear about that. But while people were charged, no one ended up being convicted of Thomas Coleman's murder. I'll put a link to the story in the show notes below. I bring this up because the series could really be inspired and we could be left with no answer of who killed Floyd, if he was even killed. If you like these type of murder mystery follow-alongs, please subscribe, give me a like, give me a comment. I want to know your theories, detectives. And before we run down the suspects, let's look about what Episode 1 taught us about the victim, Floyd Smernitch. Floyd is teaching his friend and coworker, Clark, American Sign Language. Why does Floyd know American Sign Language? Well, we're not really given a good explanation, but somehow it ties into his disease, which led him into this field. Floyd is a heart-on-his-sleeve type guy. He gets emotional over Batman's death in a comic book. But, spoiler alert, Batman survived. Floyd had a big key ring filled with keys that open many doors and lockers, but I believe there's still one key that we don't have an answer for. Floyd and his wife Carol really haven't been intimate recently, and he claims that it started when his wife Carol began a side hustle as an umpire, and seeing her in the boxy padded uniform is not a turn-on for Floyd. Floyd is trying to be a good dad to his stepson Richard. He is building a great relationship with Clark. However, sometime before he died, Floyd did a sign language message to Clark where he said, "Clark, I know you're effing my wife." Perhaps more annoying to Floyd than his marital problems is his belly fat, and he desperately wants to lose it, and that's going to tie to our second bike theory we're going to get to at the end of the podcast. 8 weeks after creating a profile on DTF St. Louis, on November 9th, 2018 at 4:03 a.m., Floyd is dead. Floyd's body was found in a pool house 3 miles from his home, and police initially suspected a heart attack. Floyd died with a profound amount of amphetamine in his body, and his heart had stopped. At the crime scene, we see a pre-mixed Bloody Mary can and a vintage Playgirl magazine spread with a nude Indiana Jones where the model's face has been scratched out. Outside the pool house where Floyd died, someone rode a recumbent bike up to it that early morning. Who rode the bike to the pool house? Now let's look at our suspects. Weatherman Clark Forrest. Clark must be the chief meteorologist at his station. He's got his picture on billboards. Clark and Floyd are hanging out. They're good friends. They're exercising together. But Clark has his own dark secret. He is unhappy in his marriage. He and his wife, they simply don't see much of each other now that she's doing volunteer work at night and he has to wake up super early to be on those morning news broadcasts. Clark is so frustrated, he repositions his daughter's swing set to get a better look at his sexy neighbor. 2 weeks after the infamous Cornhole party, Floyd has shown up at Clark's house, and Clark is pitching to Floyd an app called DTF St. Louis. It's an app for people who maybe want to spice up their love life, even if they're in a marriage. Why did Clark pitch this to Floyd? Was this Clark's idea? Was it an idea from someone else? We need to see. The police go through Clark's phone records, and they find evidence of a 3-month affair between Clark and Floyd's wife, Carol. We see Clark's text messages to Carol, which mention dreams and getting together to talk about dreams and dream meetings. If they are having an affair, it's in code. The records indicate that Carol attempted to cut off that affair some time ago, and she wanted to return to a normal life with her husband Floyd. Did it happen? Are these records honest? Clark's wife, Eimy. We really don't see much of Eimy in this episode. We know she does volunteer work at night. If Clark is sexually frustrated and going to apps to find someone to have passion with, is it possible that Eimy is working late nights having her own illicit affair? Floyd's widow, Carol. Carol has a great career at Purina, where she's slightly a bigwig in her own mind. Yet she still starts a side hustle as an umpire. Why? We see her son Richard could be into pitching. Is that why she became an umpire? Carol is not keeping her marriage problems to herself. She told Clark's wife, Eimy, that her husband was a dullard who really had trouble following a Batman comic book. On an envelope to Carol, we see her name listed as Carol Love Smernitch. And in Clark's phone, her initials are CL for Carol Love. They don't include the Smernitch. Is Love her maiden name, or maybe the name of her first husband, Richard's father? Floyd's stepson, Richard. Now, Richard may be a special needs child. He really feels uncomfortable as Floyd's shirt rises up on his belly. And Richard does love throwing rocks. Is that because he's a pitcher where his mom is an umpire, or because there's some unrelated trauma? Outside of throwing rocks, we hear that Richard likes to draw birds. Who is Richard's father? We need to find that out. Certainly, even though he didn't appear in episode 1, there could be a chance that Richard's father doesn't want Floyd being his son's new in-home dad. We're going to end every podcast with a theory, and let's go to the second recumbent bike theory. We know that Clark rides around town on a recumbent bike. He's a morning anchor, and he's biking in at 4 in the morning. You know, morning news starts at least 5 a.m., and he would have to show up at least an hour before the broadcast to get his weathercasting done correctly. So this is a fantasy, sure. He rides his recumbent bike into work. But the big clue, the big thing we want to think about, is we know that Clark bought 2 recumbent bikes. Why would Clark buy 2 recumbent bikes? He certainly can't ride 2 himself. Did one break and he needed to replace it, or did he buy it for someone else? The first thought is Clark could have bought a second bike for his wife, Eimy, so they could have something in common. But that's most likely not what's happening, right? What is our murder victim Floyd's big issue? His big issue, he wants to get rid of his belly. We see him exercising throughout the episode. He's trying to lose weight. Well, what is a recumbent bike perfect for? It's perfect for getting rid of belly fat. Clark was a good friend of Floyd. Yes, he may have been fooling around with Floyd's wife, but there was a friendship, and he probably bought it for Floyd as a present. Now, how did that second bike end up at the pool house where Floyd's body was found? If Clark bought it and gave it to Floyd, maybe he fears that Carol, the woman he's been having an affair with, the woman he must have some attachment to, wrote it and she killed Floyd, and maybe Clark will keep quiet to protect Carol. Did Richard write it to meet his dad? Or is it possible Floyd rode the bike himself to the pool house to meet another person? What do you think? If Clark bought a second bike and gave it to Floyd, who would have ridden it to the pool house? Go down in the comments and let me know on social media. Reach out to us at PHQ. The word double, the single letter P for podcast, HQ for headquarters. Next week, we'll talk episode 2. Talk to you then.